For farmers like Mary in northern Zambia, the Kafue River was more than just water, it was life itself. It nourished her crops, watered her livestock, and provided for her family. But in February 2025, that lifeline turned into a river of poison. A tailings dam at the Chinese-owned Sino Metals Leach Zambia copper mine collapsed, unleashing a torrent of toxic sludge into a tributary of the Kafue. Suddenly, the water that sustained Mary's community was filled with arsenic, mercury, and lead. This wasn't just a small leak, it was a catastrophe. The Zambian government estimated that at least 50,000 tons of acidic waste poured into the river, though some environmental groups believe the figure is much, much higher. It's like someone accidentally spilled their drink, except the drink was pure poison, and the spill was big enough to poison a country's longest river. The immediate impact was devastating and impossible to ignore. The river, once teeming with life, became a silent graveyard. Fish went belly up by the thousands, their silver bodies floating on the surface of the tainted water. The government had no choice but to impose a fishing ban, cutting off a vital source of food and income for countless families. For farmers along the riverbanks, the disaster unfolded in slow motion. The vibrant green fields of maize and vegetables began to wither and die, the soil saturated with heavy metals. What was once fertile farmland became a barren, contaminated wasteland, leaving families to face the terrifying prospect of hunger and malnutrition. This wasn't just an environmental accident, it was an assault on the very survival of the people who call this land home. Beyond the dead fish and ruined crops, a more insidious threat began to emerge: the toll on human health. People who had relied on the river for drinking, cooking, and bathing started experiencing frightening symptoms. Reports of persistent pain, skin rashes, and other mysterious ailments became common in villages near towns like Chambishi and Kitwe. Mary and her neighbors now live in a constant state of fear, wondering what long-term damage the contaminated water has done to their bodies and the bodies of their children. Every ache and pain brings a new wave of anxiety. Is this just a cold, or is it something far more sinister caused by the invisible poisons lurking in their environment? The toxins that spilled into the Kafue River didn't just kill the fish, they poisoned the peace of mind of an entire community. Scientists from Zambia's own Copperbelt University have sounded the alarm, and their warnings are chilling. They say the heavy metals unleashed by the spill won't just wash away with the next rain. In fact, they could persist in the soil and water for more than a decade without a massive and effective cleanup operation. These experts warn of terrifying long-term health risks, including kidney damage and even cancer, for the people exposed to the contaminants. To make matters worse, there are growing fears that the current rainy season could trigger a second wave of pollution. The rains could wash the settled toxins further downstream, potentially carrying the poison all the way towards the capital city, Lusaka. It's a nightmare scenario where the disaster doesn't just end, but continues to spread, a toxic ghost haunting the country for years to come. Faced with ruined livelihoods and terrifying health risks, the people of northern Zambia decided they would not suffer in silence. In September 2025, a group of 176 farmers, representing a community of what they claim is over 300,000 affected people, took a monumental step. They filed an $80 billion lawsuit against Sino Metals and its parent company, NFC Africa. This isn't just another court case, it's one of the largest environmental lawsuits in Zambia's history. The lawsuit is a powerful statement, a declaration that the lives and lands of ordinary Zambians cannot be treated as collateral damage in the pursuit of profit. The farmers allege that the dam's collapse was no mere accident, but the direct result of engineering failures, shoddy construction, and operational negligence. They are fighting for justice, for compensation, and for their future. In response to the growing crisis, the Chinese-owned company and its backers have engaged in a public relations campaign that seems to be from a different planet. The Chinese embassy in Lusaka has publicly disputed the scale of the damage, almost like telling someone their house isn't on fire while they're holding a bucket of water. They claimed the pollution was quickly contained, that the water's acidity had returned to normal levels, and that there are no lasting public health risks. This narrative directly contradicts the dead fish, the failed crops, and the sickness reported by communities on the ground. It's a classic case of who are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes? This stark difference in perspective has turned the situation into a frustrating and deeply emotional war of words. Sino Metals did make some attempts at compensation, but for many, it felt more like an insult than an apology. The company claims to have paid 454 households, but the payments were inconsistent, ranging from as little as $700 to $3,000. For families who have lost their entire livelihood and face a future of uncertainty, these sums are a drop in the toxic bucket. To make matters worse, some of the contracts reportedly came with a catch: recipients had to sign away their right to any future legal claims or compensation. It's a tactic that puts desperate people in an impossible position, forcing them to choose between immediate, inadequate relief and their right to fight for true justice down the road. It's a strategy that preys on vulnerability. Meanwhile, the actual cleanup has been stuck in bureaucratic mud. The process has been delayed by disagreements between the consultants hired to assess the damage and Sinometals itself. While the arguments continue, the toxic sludge remains in the environment, a ticking time bomb. The Zambian government has stepped in, ordering the company to begin mitigation measures like planting trees to stabilize the soil and spreading lime to neutralize the acidity. But these feel like small gestures in the face of a massive environmental disaster. For the people living with the consequences every day, the delays and disputes are infuriating. They don't need more meetings and reports. They need their river back, their land cleaned, and their health secured. To understand the full picture of what's happening in Zambia, you have to talk about China. This isn't just a story about one rogue company. It's a story about geopolitics and the immense influence China wields across the African continent. In 2024, China's investment in Zambia was estimated at a staggering $1.7 billion. And Chinese companies are major players in the nation's economy, creating over 30,000 jobs. This investment has built roads, bridges, and infrastructure, but it has also created a complex and sometimes tense relationship. Zambia's government is walking a tightrope, trying to balance the economic benefits of Chinese investment with the need to protect its own people and environment. The spill at the Sinometals mine has thrown this delicate balancing act into the spotlight. The Zambian government finds itself in a particularly tricky position because it owes China a lot of money, an estimated $5 billion in debt. This has led many to question whether the government can truly hold a Chinese state-linked company accountable. Can you really stand up to your landlord when you're months behind on rent? Zambian officials have been adamant, insisting that the debt does not compromise their authority. One official famously stated, "There is no treating them with kid gloves here. They are trying to project an image of strength and independence, reassuring their citizens and the world that justice will be served, regardless of who the perpetrator is." However, the slow progress on cleanup and accountability has left many skeptical. This dynamic is further complicated by the fact that copper is the lifeblood of Zambia's economy. The shiny red metal accounts for a whopping 70% of the country's exports and about 15% of its entire GDP. The government has ambitious plans to more than triple its copper production by 2031, which means it needs foreign investment more than ever. This reliance on the mining sector creates a powerful incentive to keep major investors, like the Chinese companies that run many of the mines, happy. It's a classic conflict of interest. How do you enforce strict environmental regulations on the very industry that keeps your economy afloat? This tension is at the heart of the struggle in Zambia today. But the geopolitical landscape is shifting. The United States has recently become Africa's largest foreign investor and has been actively strengthening its relationship with Zambia. This provides Zambia with something it hasn't had in a while: leverage. With another global superpower vying for influence, Zambia is no longer solely dependent on Chinese capital. Analysts suggest this reduces China's hold over the country and gives the Zambian government more room to maneuver. This changing global power dynamic could be a game changer, empowering Zambia to demand better from its foreign partners. The toxic spill is, therefore, not just an environmental crisis, but also a major political test in a new era of global competition. Ultimately, the toxic spill in Zambia is more than just a local tragedy. It has become a crucial test case for the entire African continent. For decades, foreign powers and multinational corporations have extracted Africa's vast natural resources, often leaving behind a legacy of environmental destruction and social disruption. The question now is whether African nations have the political will and the power to break this cycle. Can a country like Zambia stand up to a global superpower like China and demand accountability for the harm done to its people and its land? The outcome of this lawsuit and the government's response will send a powerful message to investors and governments around the world. The stakes could not be higher. What is happening in Zambia is a fight for the principle that economic development should not come at the cost of human dignity and environmental health. The farmers suing Sino-Metals are not just fighting for their own land. They are fighting for a future where foreign investment is a partnership, not a form of exploitation. They are demanding that companies, no matter how powerful or well-connected, are held to the same standards of responsibility. Their struggle is a reminder that the true wealth of a nation is not just the minerals buried under the ground, but the well-being of its people and the health of its environment. This case will set a precedent. If Zambia successfully holds Sino-Metals accountable, forcing the company to pay for the cleanup and compensate the victims fairly, it will empower other African nations to do the same. It will signal a shift in the balance of power, showing that African governments are willing and able to enforce their own laws and protect their citizens' rights. However, if the company is allowed to evade responsibility, it will send a chilling message that environmental corners can be cut and that local communities are disposable. It would reinforce the old, damaging narrative that Africa's resources are up for grabs to the highest bidder, with little regard for the consequences. The world is watching. As Chinese Premier Li Qiang visits Lusaka and the G20 leaders prepare to meet, the plight of farmers like Mary hangs in the balance. This is a defining moment for Zambia and for Africa's relationship with the rest of the world. It is a chance to prove that the continent is no longer a passive recipient of foreign interests, but an active agent in shaping its own destiny. The fight for the Kafue River is a fight for the soul of modern Africa, a continent demanding respect, justice, and a sustainable future where both its people and its environment can thrive. The outcome will tell us what that future looks like.